Mr. Chavana, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Thank you for agreeing to this interview.
It's my pleasure.
Tell us where we're at and what date it is today.
We are at 2702 Little York Road, my office here in Houston, the Space City, USA. And it is August the 7th, 2013, I believe 4:15 in the afternoon.
Okay. Now, just to be clear, this project is a collaboration between Museo Guadalupe Aztlan and the Chicano Studies Network in Houston. The project is called Sembradores de Aztlan, and our focus is on trying to gather the oral history of the people who were involved in the Chicano Civil Rights Movement, Chicano Civil Rights Movement, not only in Houston but in Texas and nationwide. So we want to thank you for agreeing to be part of this interview. Tell us about your parents. Who were your parents?
My parents were Rogelio and Arminia Chavana. They were both from the lower Rio Grande Valley. My dad was from Farforias, my mom was from McAllen. And they married, and my dad, after he was in World War II, and after World War II he got a job at the, they call it the base in Corpus Christi, as a civilian. And my formative years, I grew up in Corpus Christi, except for 2 years that I grew up in California. And so I consider Corpus my home, if you will, and there's where I lived my formative years. On my mother's side, she's Ba'i, and it's a name that is well known in the lower Rio Grande Valley. These are the Ba'is that founded South Texas, Reynosa and Padre Island.
How do you spell that last name?
B-A-L-L-I, Ba'i. Well, you've heard of Padre Island.
Yes.
Okay, it's named after Nicolas Ba'i, Padre Nicolas Ba'i. And we are descendants of his brother, Juan Jose Ba'i. And all this land was ceded from the King of Spain to the Ba'is. Unfortunately, because of land grabbers and because of encroachers from the north, our family lost hundreds of thousands of acres in South Texas. And it's always been the ambition of my forefathers, going back to my great-grandfather and my grandfather, to fight for the lands that we were dispossessed of so many years ago.
And what were their names?
Ignacio Ba'i is my grandfather. That was Ignacio Ba'i the sixth. And Ignacio Ba'i the fifth is my great-grandfather. And they fought as best they could back then. It was very difficult to fight against the establishment, the white establishment, but they did their best. But the most important thing they left us was maybe not the land that they stole from us, but memorials that they wrote as to how things were back then for these people, and how difficult it was in their fight to try to obtain this. And those memorials were used as part of a preparation that my mother used to write a book about the Ba'is. She wrote a book of her family on my mother's side, and it includes these memorials and what they did in order to attempt to get the rights back to this land. They were not successful. Later on, we filed lawsuits. Again, they were not successful. But now, as a lawyer, I understand why. It's all because of a law that came from England, said adverse possession, that if you are away from your land for a period of time and somebody goes on there and you don't kick them off, you lose your land. This was something that was not known in Mexico or Spain.
And it's still legal today.
To this very day. And that's because this was not known to Mexico, this was not known to Spain, it was not something that my forefathers were aware of. So by the time they attempted to fight, this law had kicked in, and it was too many years had passed. It's called adverse possession, and that's what killed us. And I think that's where I got my formative years for activism, through my mother and through my grandfather and great-grandfather of this, to fight and to become an activist for your rights, no matter what. And so I was taught as a very, very young man my roots and who my forefathers were, and to be proud and to understand our legacy that they left us, a very rich legacy of fighting for your rights.
Okay. Now, the land rights movement with regards to the land that your grandparents owned, was there someone in particular who picked up that banner during your childhood, or that you learned from your parents?
Yes, as I said, my great-grandfather, Ignacio Bailly, and then his son, my grandfather, Ignacio Bailly, were the ones who picked up that torch and carried it as far as they could until their deaths. The one that became very active in this thereafter with a passion was my mother, who both of these relatives of mine left much papers and documents. She codified those and was able to get these papers categorized, and like I said, this formed part of her book. That this material was included in her book, and how it was that we became dispossessed. Back then, it was not unheard of to say, the saying was pluma o plomo, that you sign or you get a bullet in your head. So either many times maybe the land was not stolen, but it may have well been because it was bought for so cheap that my forefathers had no opportunity other than to sell, or they could face death.
Pluma or plomo?
Pluma o plomo.
Well, I've never heard of that one.
You use the pen or you get the plomo.
Okay. So your mother writes, did you say your mom wrote
My
this
mom
book?
wrote the Bailly book, yes sir.
And what is the book titled?
It's entitled The Prestigious Bailly Family. She wrote this about 25 years ago. This is from a person who did not have the benefit of going to high school, but little by little researching for years and years and years, and researching hours and hours and hours, learning English, learning diction. I helped in the editing, and after many years, she was able to publish the book, which the first 10,000 copies were sold out completely. And then she issued some more, about 5,000 more, which I have about 1,500 left, that occasionally I give to family members or people who are interested. I certainly give them a copy of it.
I'd like to see a copy.
Yes, I would be happy to give you a copy. And she also wrote a book on Hispanics that were prominent in history, many Hispanics, going all the way back to the time that they arrived here in the New World. It included a person that was admired in my hometown of Corpus Christi, Dr. Hector Perez Garcia, who was considered
The founder of the American GI Forum.
Exactly. In fact, my dad was one of the original members to form this organization. After the war, he was contacted as being a veteran, and they met at a little elementary school near our house called Chavana, and there is where they formed the American GI Forum with Dr. Garcia.
Was that 48 or 49?
49, I believe.
49,
Yeah.
okay.
And there's where they formed that particular organization.
So your dad was one of the founding
One of the
members?
founding members of the GI Forum.
And they met at the Chavana School?
The Chavana Elementary School.
In Corpus?
In Corpus Christi.
Okay, and that was in 49?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was across the street from St. Joseph Catholic Church, maybe 3 blocks from my house.
And what do you remember your dad saying? Well, I don't know if it was too young for you to remember, but what do you remember?
I wasn't born yet, but he definitely remembers meeting the doctor. He definitely remembers being motivated by his charisma, and that the doctor told him we need an organization for Hispanic war veterans or for veterans. And we're looking to form this organization, and you're being a veteran, being Hispanic, we certainly want you to be involved. And he said, I'll be there, and along with other Hispanic veterans there in Corpus Christi, and they formed the organization. It's interesting to note that Corpus Christi is also where LULAC was founded back in 1929. So Corpus Christi has a little bit of history of being an activist
Quite a
city.
bit,
Yes.
quite a bit, yes.
Yes.
So let's fast forward a little bit. With regards to your high school years, where did you see your activism blossom? Did it happen at that period of time, and who were your mentors at that period?
Not so much high school, but when I was in junior college, I attended a college there in Corpus Christi, a two-year college called Del Mar College there. And
It's still there, right?
It's still there.
Yeah.
Still there, definitely. It's still a two-year college, but it's still there. And I was impressed by some lawyers who had their office maybe 3 or 4 blocks from the college. And I was impressed because they were in the news and being activists. And one day I showed up at their law office and I told them, you know, I'm interested in being a lawyer. Can I work for you? Well, they promptly laughed and they said, well, you can answer that phone over there and sweep the floors.
What year was this? Would you say?
1969, 1970. And I was impressed with their skills. They would let me go with them to court when they would argue cases, and I said, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. And they became well known in the community, and even one later on happened to run for governor.
Okay, and what law firm was this?
This was a law firm of 3 individuals. One was Mr. Peña, originally from San Antonio. He moved to Corpus. There was Mr. Alberto Huerta. I don't know where he was originally from. I think Corpus, and he was another member of that firm. And then there was a third one, very charismatic young man, very smart, and his happened to be Ramsey Muniz.
Whoa, Ramsey Muniz?
Yes, sir.
Wow. I still visit him.
Yes, and I met these gentlemen. They formed their law firm about 3 blocks from Del Mar College. And like I said, they would let me come in and answer the phone and sweep the floors. And when we got to court, I would open the door for them so they would come out, and I would run behind them to go to court. And
but you were contaminated.
yes, I was. I had already that activism, and I was really impressed by them and their skills, their education, and I guess you could say that was one big factor of why I went to law school.
Okay, so just to kind of get an idea of your academic life before Del Mar College, was there something significant that happened in your primary years or middle school or high school that also catapulted you to say, you know, I can do this, I can become a lawyer?
I think the more so than the attorneys, that firm, the most important factor why I became a lawyer is because of my dad. He always talked highly about lawyers. He always said that he was impressed by them and their skill and their oratory. And I think it was something that had he had an opportunity to get an education, he would have loved to become an attorney. He didn't have that opportunity. But it was something that he always impressed upon myself and my two brothers.
How far in school did your dad go to?
My dad went to 6th grade.
6th grade. At what school do you remember?
That was in Falfurrias, Texas. The middle school there. At that time, it was the Great Depression, and they had a program. President Roosevelt put out a program called CCC, Civilian Conservation Camps, or Corps. And there's where they would take young men and take them out to various parts of the country to build national parks, like the Big Bend National Park, there's where my dad worked, and other parks, and they would pay them a whopping $30 a month. 25 of it went back home, and they get to keep $5.
Wow.
So that was a lot of money. And so my dad, to help support the family, originally the application came for his brother, mi tío Abel, to go to that opportunity. But mi tío Abel had just gotten married, and my grandfather said, "We're not going to lose this opportunity. You're going to be Abel," he told my dad.
So that's the name he went under?
Yes, to not lose the opportunity. So he posed as his older brother to go and work there and send home $25 a month, and he could keep $5 to buy Cokes.
So your father was also influential in your decision to pursue jurisprudence?
I think more so, even than the lawyers, because he was so impressed that one time he was injured on the job and he couldn't work. He had a broken knee, but he could still drive and walk with crutches. When he was off, he would go off to the courts. I was in school, and he would go off to the courts and listen to the lawyers present arguments, and he would come back and tell me, this lawyer said this, and this lawyer said that, and how impressed he was with the occupation and profession of a lawyer. And it's something that it really sunk in. He never said to me, "You are going to be a lawyer," but he made it known that he thought that that would be a good profession for me. And so I kind of followed in his request, and I know that when I became a lawyer, how impressed he was, and how honored he was that I became a lawyer. And I'll never forget the day that I took them to Austin, and I got sworn in, and they were standing next to me. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the feeling like at that time?
Oh boy. I know they were proud. I know I was proud.
That's when you were sworn in as a lawyer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's after you passed your law exam?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to take the bar exam. That's the 4-day test. And
4 days? It's still 4 days?
Yeah. And you know, we went up there, and I got sworn in there in Austin. And, it was very moving. Still today.
Yeah. Do you want me to go get you some napkins?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, so your father he's the proudest man on earth.
Yeah.
When you get sworn in as a lawyer. But let's go back to Del Mar College. There was some movement with regards to the Chicano movement during that time, and of course Ramsey Muñiz also in '72. Now, does he win he runs for governor of Texas?
He runs for governor.
Right.
What happened was, I did my 2 years in Del Mar, and at that time in Corpus, you had to leave to go get your other 2 years, the BA degree, and so I decided to go to Southwest Texas State in San Marcos to finish up my degree plan. And
which is now Texas State.
Correct.
Yep.
And well, we went up there, and from time to time I would still have contact with these guys in Corpus, and I found out that they were preparing to file for a third party. Back then it was very hard because it was, Democrats were in control mostly of the government, statewide, local, and everything.
Right.
So they decided they were going to form a third party, which was La Raza Unida. And I contacted them when I heard what was going on, and sure enough, we met with other individuals from Austin, from San Antonio, because our assignment was to get people to sign a petition to establish this third party.
And how many signatures did you need?
Oh,
Thousands?
thousands.
Yeah.
And I know that we had to present them to the Secretary of State in Austin. They had to verify them. They had to be voters. And we were able, through knocking on many, many doors and many houses, that we were able to get the signatures. So we had a slate of candidates: governor, lieutenant governor, railroad commissioner, all of these, attorney general. We had a slate of candidates that ran under the Raza Unida party banner.
So where did this meeting take place, Dr. Chavana? And what year was this? When you first learned this is the assignment that we need you to run with?
The meetings were conducted in various places. San Antonio, some in San Marcos, and they were usually headed by college students. We were the activists, plus we had the time to do it, and in Austin, and we would be approached, or I guess guided, by Ramsey Muniz and his two law partners as to the legal aspects of what's involved in what we had to do and how we can do it and how to proceed legally. And from another young man, we had the organization side of it, how to approach people, how to organize, and how we should go about organizing this political party.
What about from Robstown? Were you working with some of the people in
Yes,
Robstown?
yes. Guadalupe Youngblood was.
Control?
Yes, yes. Many of the people, college students who were in Mayo, went on to form La Raza Unida, Mayo being the Mexican American Youth Organization. And there was a young man who would come from time to time and help us with the organizational aspects. Brilliant young man, extremely intelligent, very high IQ, and would help us also.
And that was? You were hoping I wasn't going to ask you.
Jose Ángel Gutiérrez.
Okay. And he was living in Crystal City?
At that time he was living in Crystal City. He had just graduated himself and was doing his organizing at the there in Crystal City. And the impetus, I guess, to forming this political party was the boycott they had, the walkout they had there in Crystal City.
The high school?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it was over something that we would consider today very trivial, but very important to a high school student, in that in a high school where 80% of the students are Hispanics, they did not have one single Hispanic cheerleader. And so the reason for the walkout was over that issue. And it was successful, and next thing you know, they didn't stop there. They formed the political party, and it spread throughout South Texas, Kingsville, Corpus Christi, Brownsville, up north to San Antonio, San Marcos, Austin, all these areas.
Houston?
Yes, Houston. And I'll never forget that one of the most proudest moments is when we had our national convention in Paso,
Mhm.
where Ramsey Muniz was nominated to run for governor, as well as a whole slate.
Where exactly in El Paso did that take place? Do you remember?
It was an auditorium in El Paso. I don't know, it's still
It
there.
wasn't a hotel.
It was not a hotel, it was an auditorium.
Mhm.
Those of us were all students who had enough money for a hotel. Well, we would rent a hotel and say there was 2 people, and actually there was like 8
Yeah.
in a room.
Sleeping bags.
Sleeping, yeah,
Yeah.
sleeping on the floor or on sleeping bags or wherever we could sleep. And it made national news that a political party, a third political party was founded in Texas. We had such distinguished guests as Jorge Gonzalez. We had people like Reyes Lopez Tijerina
In El Paso.
in El Paso.
For the convention.
Yes, sir. And other, of course, Gutierrez, Renzo Muniz and these people. And it was quite a convention, it was very much history in the making to go forth with the political party that we had formed.
When do you hear the self-inscription Chicano? When did that really, come into your world, so to speak, and you begin to say, "Soy Chicano o qué soy?"
I think it was in college there in Corpus Christi, there in Del Mar, where along with the students there, the lawyers there down the street, Ramsey, Muniz, and Huerta, and Mr. Peña, would use the term, and I said, oh, that sounds pretty cool, I had never, up to that point, heard it. Maybe if I had, here and there, I didn't put any attention to it. Certainly no cultural significance.
Right.
And I think it was there at Del Mar when I was 18 and 19 is when the term first came into existence for me. And then when I went up to what is now Texas State University, well, there was Chicano Studies.
There was?
There was.
Oh, and who was teaching there?
And that was part of the history department. Professor.
There still is.
Well, back then, I'm sure there's still existence. If anything, it should be expanded by now. But it was part of the history department, and it was Dr. Wilson who was in charge of that. He himself was at times embarrassed because there was a white guy in charge of the Chicano Studies program, but he did an excellent job. And we were able to learn about the Chicano writers, Rodolfo Anaya, and of course Gutierrez, and of course Jorge Gonzalez, and these people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jose Antonio?
I think so. And then there was a professor from the University of Texas. What's his name?
Dr. Ortego?
Estampas del Valle is the name of his book.
Rolando Peñosa.
Right. And that's when I became interested and activist in that platform.
So how did the Chicano movement positively change your life, and in what areas? Was it more social, was it more political, was it more intellectual, or was it a combination of all?
It's all those things, plus spiritual. I always knew my identity, but this gave me an affirmation of my identity, that I understood that although many years in my history, in my the people who came before me, my forefathers, were from Mexico. Nonetheless, we had been in Texas before it was Texas, before it was part of the United States. And
before 1848?
Yes, many years, many generations we had spent and been there in Texas, South Texas specifically. And so I understood the dichotomy between Mexico and Texas, the United States, but at the same time, a blending of the both, a coming together of both cultures, and politically and culturally, to come up with this of Chicano.
So the spirituality part of the Chicano movement was something that grabbed your attention. What specific parts of the spirituality do you think were important?
To me, I like the activism, the coming together, the unity, the political force that it could represent and should represent for us as a people, and how we could come together as a group of people and indeed be able to throw off those shackles of discrimination that heretofore had existed. I'll never forget, my dad told me that when he came back from World War II, after fighting for his country and putting his life on the line for his country, and many did not come back, but he was lucky in that he survived the war and came back, that he was in uniform, walking down Corpus Christi and going to a restaurant there, and it's still there, where he saw a sign that said, "No Mexicans allowed." And he's looking at his uniform and saying, "What did I fight for?" So I think that would give him all the more ganas to form the organization with Dr. Garcia, the American GI Corps, to fight for the Hispanic veterans.
Do you remember the name of that restaurant that he...
Yes, called Chat and Chew.
Chat and Chew.
Chat and Chew.
And it's still there?
It's on Leopard Street. Very close, believe it or not, ironically, to where Selena would practice. And the studio still today, there today still. And a stone's throw from that recording studio where Selena would practice and record.
If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Chavana, you were not paid for your activism.
Never.
So what was it what motivated you to become involved? What do you think was the payment that was not money, it was something else?
Again, I think it was what I learned at home from my dad, what I learned at home from my mother, you know, to be active, and I learned at a young age, you know, that compared to other people in the neighborhood, we were blessed. We had a little more than the others. And my parents always taught me, to whom much is given, much is expected. So this was my way of giving back, of helping my community come together and realize their potential. And of course, needless to say, the best way that I could do that is to get my education. And that's something that my parents always taught us, that is going to be the equalizer. That's going to be the key that opens the doors.
So your activism increases during the campaign that Ramsey
Yes.
launches to become the let's see, mayor, not mayor, but governor of Texas. How did you see Ramsey as the best candidate for that position? What qualities do you think he had, and that convinced you, hey, there's no way that this man is going to lose? Maybe.
Number one, I knew him before he even thought about announcing for governor. I knew him before the Raza Unida party was even formed. I had seen him in action at the courthouse. I had seen him in his office with his clients. And if I could say anything, one word about Ramsey is this: charisma. He would walk into a room, men and women would turn in his direction. He commanded their attention. Besides being a handsome man, you know, he was a star football player at Baylor.
Right.
And he was physically fit, handsome man,
Parece gringo.
Also,
Yeah.
although he went to a rival high school, but that's okay, that I went to in Corpus. Beautiful wife, beautiful daughter. He had that charisma that very few people have. I guess the only other person, well, one other person is Gutierrez. He has that charisma. But, and then of course his intelligence. He's graduating from one of the top law schools in the nation. So you knew he was a sharp guy, you knew he was a smart guy and knew what he was doing. And that's why I put my support behind him, Muniz, because I number one, believed in him, and number two, believed in the cause.
Okay. Ramsey Muniz emerges as one of the major Chicano icons in the nation during that period in the 70s. Where else does he create a major influence within your circles of people?
Exactly. He would go to, say, San Marcos, or he would call ahead, and he would say, you know, I'm going up to the San Marcos area, get a meeting together. You know, it was our job to get a rally going. So it was our job to announce to the people that candidate for governor, Ramsey Muniz, would be here. We would go to a little radio station there in San Marcos, and we would get PSIs, public service announcements, that we're going to have this event. Hang out posters, talk to the business people there in San Marcos, talk to the locals, and they received him, and they received him warmly. We would go down to Lockhart, Luling, all those little areas, New Braunfels, Seguin.
And who was funding all this?
We were. We were working on a shoestring budget. Understand this was before the days of the internet.
Right.
And those of us who had phones, which were very few, you know, we're talking students here, you know, we would just come together and say, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. You go to San Marcos, you go to New Braunfels, you go to Seguin, talk to so-and-so in Seguin, or I was in charge of going to the radio station. I don't know why, but the people at the radio station liked me. In fact, when I ran for city council in San Marcos, they gave me free spots. So they knew me there at the radio station, and they would throw in some public service announcements, PSAs, and you know, we didn't have money. The only thing they gave us were the blank forms where the people had to sign, you know, to sign up that they wanted to be in this political party, and that they sent, and they sent some clipboards and some pencils and pens, and that's about it.
Make it happen.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Get the signatures, and we'll have somebody come by and pick them up and deliver them to us.
Well, let's finish, Dr. Chavana, with this part. You're now in the political arena as a candidate for city council in San Marcos, right?
Yes.
What year does this take place, and what motivated you to run for that position under the Raza Unida party, right?
Yes, I'll show you a poster of mine in a minute in my room. I ran for that position because the year before, another student there in San Marcos at the university ran and was elected. There was some question back then as to whether a student could vote in San Marcos if he was from San Antonio or from Corpus or from somewhere else. But then the Supreme Court came out that wherever the student considers his residence, that student can vote at that city. And so I changed my residence to San Marcos, and I ran for city council along with another person who was like a candidate with me. I was going for position G and he was going for position H or something like that. And
This was in the 70s?
1972.
72,
Yeah.
okay.
And unfortunately, I missed the runoff by 43 votes.
And how many votes were you able to garnish?
I garnished 2,800 votes.
Wow, that's a lot. It had never been it never happened
In a city the size of, well, not counting students, the town itself was like 8,000 people.
So most of them were Raza.
Students, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That they had changed their residence from San Antonio to San Marcos or from Corpus or wherever they were from, specifically so they could vote for me, and you know, I consider that an honor.
Yeah. So this is.
And by the way, Renzo Muniz made a tape for me supporting my candidacy, which I have still today.
It's a cassette tape.
Cassette tape. No DVDs back then, no CDs back then. It's a little cassette.
Yeah.
I have today.
Wow. So you also have a private collection with regards to the Raza Unida Party and
I have this.
Okay.
Newspapers, posters, buttons. My son and daughter-in-law, of all the buttons that I had, made a beautiful frame with these buttons and one of my bumper stickers that I had when I ran for office. And I have other material still to this date, and I have that tape, which I cherish.
Mr. Chavana, I want to tell you that what you've created here in Houston, as far as your son Hector and Aztlan, and the rest of your family, it's been commendable. I mean, we have been amazed at the legacy that you have left here, begun here in Houston, and of course in Corpus Christi and the places that you lived as well. But you know, being from Houston, a native myself, I've seen la raíces that you've left here, that you started here in Houston, and that is very commendable. So I consider you one of the living treasures.
Thank you, sir.
Of
It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
And I would just say that it's been quite a ride, but every minute of it I cherished. I would not do anything different. If anything, I would tell the young persons out there, you need to be involved. You need to be an activist. You need to know your roots and where you're going. That is very important. And most important, get that education. Get that education.
Here's an addendum. Have you ever considered teaching a course in Mexican American Studies?
I've never considered that, but who knows, you know. When I start working less hours here in my law office, maybe instead of working 60 hours a week, I'll work 40 hours a week. Then I may have time to do that. Certainly, I would love to do that. My son, Adrian, is a teacher, and he would love to get into teaching Chicano culture and history. I know that he's told me that. And I'm very proud of my sons and my daughter that they have continued with the movimiento and
your granddaughter as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Siglali, yes, very much.
Yeah.
And that it's important for me to know that that I have imparted this to them, and that they have taken it seriously. And I apologize if I got a little
nothing to apologize about,
you know, a little emotional, but
pues nuestra familia Medel le ofrece nuestra casa aquí en Houston con
Gracias.
desean, señor.
gracias.
I want to see those, just if you have a couple of minutes.
Now, this Raza Unida stuff, I don't have it here or at home. Hector has some.
Yeah, he was showing me some earlier.